All right, I'm Dr. Craig. I'm an educational psychologist and the creator of BarkingDogs.net. And I'm here again today representing the Barking Dogs Coalition. The production you're watching now is the seventh in a sequence series of 8 videos we've made about the barking laws. Now, this particular video gets into the specifics of how the great barking law fraud was perpetrated on the American public, and how that resulted in the de facto legalization of chronic barking. However, if you'd like to jump over to any of our other videos about the barking laws, just go to the description section below. There you'll find annotated links to all of our barking law videos, or just click on the link now appearing on your screen. Now, in the last video, I talked about how unenforceable barking laws were foisted on the public. How by passing anti-barking laws that could not be actuated, they created a situation in which chronic barking is against the law, technically speaking, while in actual fact, for all practical purposes, they have made it completely legal. So they created the appearance that they were doing one thing, while in truth they were doing the exact opposite of that. It was a reprehensible act of treachery and a deplorable betrayal of the public trust by people who were supposedly elected to look out for our best interests. And they followed up that despicable act of deception by passing laws that harass and abuse the victims while shielding the perpetrators, by way of laws that coddle them as though they are the victims. But here's the thing. Not only are the barking laws worthless, they were intended to be worthless, which is why they were intentionally written in a way that ensured that they would be unenforceable. Now, you might be wondering how I can say with such great certainty that those laws were consciously crafted with the intention of making them unenforceable. Well, no offense intended, but you would have to be stupid, and I mean really stupid, to believe that the lawmakers were so stupid that they couldn't see that those laws were not going to have any impact whatsoever on the barking crisis. If you're familiar with those laws, then I'm sure you'll agree with me. And if you're not familiar with those laws, then just watch the rest of our videos about the barking laws. And at that point, I'm sure you will agree with me on at least this much. They knew there was no damn way those laws could ever be used to force a neighbor to quiet his dog. Okay, so here's an example of a barking law that could work. The first 2 times your dog's voice enters your neighbor's home, you get a warning. But on the 3rd strike, the dog is removed from the property and held by the authorities until you can convince a judge that you have a plan in place to keep the animal quiet in the future. So that's an example of a barking law that could work. But our corporate-owned lawmakers didn't create a law like that. They chose to create laws that require that before the law can be enforced, you must first do things that are impossible for you to do. Now, that's ridiculous. It's like saying, sure, we'll help you, but before we help you, you'll first have to do some things that you can't do. And if you can't do the things that you can't do, because they can't be done, well, then that's on you. You can't blame us for that. So instead of passing readily enforceable barking laws, they adopted laws that make demands on the victims that are impossible for them to meet, and that in any case involve endless delays and entail the severe governmental harassment of the victimized complainants. Do you really think that's the most effective law they were capable of coming up with? And don't you think they must have been aware that they were adopting a law that is the equivalent of an umbrella that can't be opened? Or to make the analogy more exact, they were passing laws that are the equivalent of an umbrella that can't be opened, that delivers an electric shock every time you try to open it. You'd have to be pretty dumb to believe that they could have been that stupid. Dare I say that someone might have provided them with some incentive for doing the dumb thing instead of doing the right thing? Okay, so they passed laws that are unenforceable and they did it intentionally. But why would they want to pass unenforceable barking laws? They passed an unenforceable law because they wanted barking to be unprosecutable. You know, for all practical purposes, they wanted it to be legal. You don't have to be a world-class sleuth to deduce that. But why would they want chronic barking to be legal? Okay, here's the thing. There's a multi-billion-dollar dog lobby in this country that hoovers up an astounding amount of money every year selling products and services to dog owners. The dog industry is damn near as powerful as the National Rifle Association. They get whatever they want from the politicians. And what the dog industry wants is for the barking laws to be unenforceable. That's because if dog owners are forced to socialize their dogs and train them, and in general they're required to maintain the animals in a humane, responsible fashion, fewer people are going to want to own a dog. And that would mean fewer people buying dog-related products. And that would cost a lot of powerful people a hell of a lot of money. Remember, the dog industry has some big bucks to throw around. And the United States has the best politicians money can buy here in this proud land where bribery has long been all but straight up outright legal. Those people want to make it as easy as possible to own a dog. In fact, to the extent possible, they want dog ownership to be an altogether carefree experience. And the best way to make dog ownership a no-hassle, carefree experience is to construct a legal code that makes it impossible to hold dog owners accountable for what their dogs do. That's why they want barking to be legal, so their clientele can't be held responsible or penalized in any way for their failure to bark train their dogs. Just as they don't want dog owners to be held responsible for anything or inconvenienced in any way. But if you have an effective barking law in place, then the victimized neighbors are going to use that to force their customers to take responsibility for their dog's behavior. And if you're part of the dog lobby, you're going to consider that a very bad thing. They don't want anyone to be able to hold dog owners accountable. Because if the law allows dog owners to be held responsible for what their dogs do, that puts a damper on the whole notion of carefree dog ownership. And that could result in fewer people wanting to own dogs, which could really put a dent in their bottom line. All right, so that makes sense, doesn't it? I think we can all understand why the dog lobby wanted chronic barking to be de factorily legal, because that way no one can hold their customers accountable for refusing to take responsibility for their barking dogs. And that means less hassle for their customers, which would mean more customers in the future and more money for them. But every answer leads to a new question, and logically the next question is this. Why would they want to pass an unenforceable barking law? If their goal is to make sure that chronic barking is legal, then why not just have no barking law? For the politicians and the lobbyists, there were several advantages to passing unenforceable barking laws. For one thing, having an unenforceable law in the books serves to forestall the possible future passage of an effective barking law. In other words, they knew they could preempt the passage of effective ordinances by already having unenforceable ordinances on the books. That way, when someone tries to pressure them into passing an effective barking ordinance, they can just say, barking law? We don't need no fucking barking law. We already got one of those. But the unendurable burden placed on the complainants serves another purpose as well. it creates a situation in which the powers that be can blame the victims. That way the politicians and stooges in animal control can deflect blame and direct it back at the complainants. You know, they say, you failed in your effort to do the impossible things that the unenforceable barking laws say that you must do before you can be helped. So it's your fault that we won't help you. That way, the irresponsible dog owners don't get the blame. You know, the lawyers for the dog lobby wouldn't like that. And also that way the politicians don't get the blame either, because the politicians wouldn't like that. No, the way those laws are structured make it clear that it is all the victim's fault. So the people in animal control just say, well, he brought this on himself by failing in his efforts to do what we told him he has to do. So he doesn't deserve any help. And we're under no obligation to help him. That way, they could please the lobbyists by making it legal to keep a dog that barks chronically without it becoming apparent to the public that they had done that. So by passing unenforceable barking laws, they created the appearance that they were doing one thing, while in truth they were doing the exact opposite of that. It was a reprehensible act of treachery and a deplorable betrayal of the public trust. Now, I know this can all be confusing. That's because everything about the barking crisis was intentionally engineered by the special interests to be confusing. Because fostering confusion is an excellent way to cover up shameful behavior. And God knows there's been some shameful shit been going on around here. But this much is clear. By passing anti-barking laws that could not be enforced, they have essentially legalized chronic barking. So here's one last question I'll ask and answer for you. You may be wondering how I can be so sure that our unenforceable barking laws were written by and lobbied into place by attorneys representing the dog industry. Well, here's the thing. If lobbyists for the dog industry did not bribe and cajole our politicians into allowing their attorneys to write the laws governing their industry, they'd be about the only massive commercial entity in the United States that did not do that. But also, let me tell you something about laws. They don't just happen. They don't fall from the sky or grow up out of the pavement. We have the laws we have because somebody put a lot of time, money, and energy into making each of them happen. If you want to know who's behind a given law, you need to look at who benefits from that law. Well, the only people who benefit from lax dog laws in general, and unenforceable barking laws in particular, are the people who are selling the products to the people who are keeping dogs, who are people they do not want to see inconvenienced with a bunch of pesky laws that mandate that either they must behave responsibly or suffer the consequences. These unenforceable barking laws are really just one segment of a whole host of dog laws that benefit the corporations, but devastate our canine population, cost society a hell of a lot of money, and negatively impact the health and well-being of the human populace. So that's it for our barking law video about the underhanded betrayal of the public that led to the de facto legalization of chronic barking. In a few seconds, a link will appear on your screen. Just click on that and it will take you to the next video in our sequence series about the barking laws, where we ask why the victimized neighbors should be forced to carry the onus for forcing nearby dog owners to behave responsibly. Watch for that link. It should be coming up any time now.